Warzone is a game of gunplay, no doubt. Sometimes luck, sometimes outthinking your opponent, but gunplay is a big part of that. And within Season 2, I actually think we have a decent number of weapons that are competitive in nature in terms of an overall meta. Of course, there are those ones that will stand out. FFAR and AUG are the probably two biggest ones you'll immediately think about, but there also are a handful of weapons that are what I'd consider sleeper weapons. Weapons that aren't exactly meta, but can absolutely pack a punch in the right hands and with the right build. So today I want to take a look at 5 of the most underrated weapons I think in Season 2. So as we go along, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you have any weapon that you enjoy out of this list? Anything you'd like to add to this list perhaps that you'd consider an underrated weapon? Whatever it is, feel free to let me know. As well, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Warzone, Cold War, and anything COD related. We're on that road to 400,000 subscribers, and we'll keep you up to date with all things you need to know in relation to COD. So if you're interested in joining the community, I'd love to have you. And finally, make sure to check out Gamer Advantage for the best blue light glasses on the market. Link in the description below. But anyways, let's jump into these underrated weapons. So first I want to talk about a weapon that actually you can play around with without even having to equip it to your loadout, that being the Bullfrog. Now the Bullfrog has been a consistent favorite of mine for weapons that I use that are off meta perhaps. You're going to have a ton of people gravitating towards that MAC-10, that LC-10 even with this season in terms of the SMG play, but that Bullfrog is an incredibly reliable weapon that's easy to manage and can absolutely slay. You just need to land 1 or 2 more shots with the given damage profile, which isn't necessarily bad, it's just that's why it might not have a competitive edge per se compared to other melting weapons. But coming back to it, you don't really even need to sometimes put this on your loadout, because what's nice about Season 2 is that it's actually ground loot, so that means that you can absolutely go on a tear early on in your match with this thing compared to other weapons you may find. So that's definitely a nice start here for this. Now, as for this, what I'd recommend if you do put it on your class loadout, I'd end up recommending the GRU suppressor, the 6.7-inch reinforced barrel, the KGB skeletal stock, the Spetsnaz grip, and likely the 65-round mag here at this. The Bullfrog is good enough that you can get away with changing some of these in terms of, say, that magazine. You don't necessarily need it. The skeletal stock can be switched to maybe, say, the Spetsnaz stock, but I end up liking the additional sprint to fire time the skeletal stock gives, whereas the PKM stock does not. And I'm not hip firing much, so I'll take the little higher penalty here for that. But again, you try this thing out, it will take maybe 1 or 2 more shots extra to kill a player as opposed to, say, another weapon you may be using for close quarters, but it's incredibly easy to manage, incredibly easy to run, and you'll be able to shred through your enemies, even if it's something you might not think about first and foremost. Next, the old reliable itself has made a somewhat return in recent times with people's interest in it, that being Modern Warfare's M4A1. Some of you may have noticed that I've been using it in clips earlier in the week when I was gathering some footage for it and had it equipped for things when I jumped into, say, Plunder, but is it a weapon that will shred like others that we've seen like the FFAR or the AUG? Absolutely not. But if you want something that's good all around for a decent rifle, this can still do well if you're consistent with your aim. So it's definitely a valid option if you want to play off meta. The M4 was the original meta, or was one of the original metas within Warzone, and it's nice to relive the classic. The M4 currently isn't leading the pack in TTK, damage per shot, fire rate, or really any of the other major categories that you'd rank weapons by. I just realized, wow, I am not selling this well. But ease of use reminds me a bit of that Kilo when it was popular. Simple and easy to control, which makes it an easy weapon to just pick up and play with. As with the Bullfrog, you're likely going to need an extra shot or 2 here in order to secure the kills, which again isn't inherently bad. It just makes this a bit of an off-meta weapon, so those engagements you'll need to take, you have to think a little bit more about them, or give yourself enough breathing room to be able to take those engagements or dip out if necessary. For the M4A1, I end up running normally the Monolithic Suppressor, the Corvus Custom Marksman Barrel, the VLK 3x Optic, the Commando foregrip, and the 60-round mag. A couple of these things are of course interchangeable. The Grenadier barrel is still a solid choice as well. The optic doesn't necessarily need to be the 3x optic, or you can actually replace it and put on a stock, which is definitely a nice option as well. Commando grip you can end up changing out if you want to, but that's something that I've been running around with as well. The next one is a little bit of an interesting one that has popped up as of lately. That's the AK-47 from Black Ops Cold War. Now, this one is interesting because it has some incredibly competitive attributes like the bullet velocities and in some scenarios the TTK, but it doesn't quite take the cake against the other top competitors like the FFAR or the Amax, but it's kind of close. The AK-47 excels in that TTK and bullet velocity, and for that, it can be a mid-range weapon. Not something that I'd necessarily take in place of the AUG or an AMAX, but perhaps in a support role for that as a secondary. This can do things similar to the FFAR, but again, just a hair slower on that fire rate and TTK. hence why it's an underrated weapon. Head-to-head, it might not stack up, but that's why it didn't make it into the top 10 weapons we discussed at the beginning of the season. Not to mention also, the recoil is kind of wild with this one with a 60 round mag, so you want to tap or burst fire this weapon, or at least take it in smaller intervals rather than just holding down the trigger for the entire 60 rounds. For this though, I'd recommend something like the GRU suppressor, the takedown or reinforced barrels to get a little bit added bullet velocity, maybe that strafing speed that you like as well, the Spetsnaz grip, the 60 round mag. The speed mags right now, as we've mentioned before, are a little bit busted. You end up losing out a little bit more on that ADS time for a very minimal difference in terms of reload speed, so the regular 60 round mag definitely isn't a bad option. And then something like a 2x optic, because I'm not a huge fan of the iron sights of the AK-47. They could absolutely be worse, but I like to have that pinpoint precision. Outside of that, we're actually going to revisit here with this next one kind of a number 4 and 4A, if you will, because they're very similar in how they perform. Their builds, though, being from different games. We're going to revisit the Bruin meta here with this one. This thing, of course, being an absolute slapper back in the day, and it was one of those weapons that became the overwhelming meta to the point where it was annoying, and you just kind of hoped that anybody would use literally any other weapon. But the Bruin is absolutely still a powerhouse, but it's a little bit worse than you may remember it because of some adjustments to things like recoil. Now, this is absolutely, I'd say, a mid-range weapon. I wouldn't take this for long-range engagements like you could have earlier on in the year, but for this, I'd end up running the monolithic suppressor, the XRK Horizon 23-inch barrel, the TAC laser for a little bit added ADS here on that one, the VLK 3x optic, and the 60 round mag, again, for a little bit more handling and precision with that. But also in a similar fashion to the Bruin, kind of, again, that 4A, is a weapon of the Stoner. The Stoner is another high-powered LMG that has some attributes that you can absolutely capitalize on if you build the weapon out properly. Things like being able to take a hybrid of having a little bit better movement, but also keeping that damage that an LMG like the Stoner can afford. For this, I'd end up running the Agency Suppressor, the 17.8-inch Cavalry Lancer barrel, the SFOD Speed Grip, the Raider Pad, and the Axial Arms 3x optic, though that, again, is a little bit more interchangeable. For this build, you're kind of trying to gain that maximum speed potential, but also keeping as much damage and bullet velocity and damage range as possible. I think you can tackle that pretty well with this build. The final weapon I'll talk about here in terms of underrated weapons is one that, again, kind of teeters back and forth for me here with this, the AS Val. In sheer TTK, this weapon, again, goes back and forth because it is something that will cut through enemies, but it's a very niche weapon. It's something that doesn't handle well in every single scenario like you'd want, but if you have it in the right scenarios, it's incredible. The AS Val is that weird one because, like we said, it's not incredibly versatile to fit every playstyle, but that TTK is the best close TTK out of every weapon within Warzone. With this, I'd normally run it as a support weapon for longer range capability, and my normal preference with that being something like a sniper of the Kar 98K, but you can absolutely use it with anything long range, really, so maybe if you want to, again, use that AUG, you absolutely can, but just be conscious of, just like the meta for the FFAR and AUG, you're going to be doubling up on AR, so you'll burn through ammo a lot quicker with that. But at the same time, you'll have two of the, statistically speaking, fastest killing weapons in all of Warzone. Before the AS Val, I end up running the 200mm OSA barrel, the Stray Lock stock, the Ranger foregrip, the 30 round mag, and the rubberized grip tape. Now, this is one that you absolutely want to carry for control because you're going to have a lot of kick here with this. And again, close quarters is where you want to challenge this kind of stuff because that's where the TTK excels. Plus, with 30 rounds, you don't want to be challenging something at a tremendous distance and maybe not even getting 1 kill per round. But you'll absolutely need to make sure that you can end up securing kills so that you can dip in and out of cover with this because of that lack of ammo. But that to me is the 5 or 6 underrated weapons here within Season 2 that I've been playing around with that I absolutely think you can excel with. So give them a try. Let me know how you do down there in the comment section down below. But that's where we're going to wrap it up. I would love to get your thoughts and feedback down there in the comment section down below. Agree with this list, disagree with it, whatever it is, feel free to let me know. Hopefully you enjoyed the video though. If you did, make sure you drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Warzone, Cold War, and anything COD related. We'll keep you up to date with all of it. So if you're interested, hit that subscribe button. If you also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get content on YouTube. Probably live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But said, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.